If you keep trying to manipulate me, I won't hesitate to expose everything. Eliza calmly placed the resignation letter in front of her father. No tears, no shouting, because for the first time in her life, she knew she was holding the board making the move. The conference room fell into silence. Her mother had gone pale. Her father's hands trembled as he gripped the pen. Eliza was no longer the obedient daughter who always nodded. She was the heir, the CEO, the truth they never dared to face. You're listening to a true story, one of courage, clarity, and transformation. The journey of a woman who dared to step away from the role of the family's burden bearer, to finally live life on her own terms. If you've ever felt trapped in relationships defined by duty but starved of true love, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another soul-stirring story like this one. Now let's begin the story of Eliza Morgan, the woman who redefined family self-worth and peace. My name is Eliza Morgan, 28 years old. I live in Fairview, a peaceful yet vibrant city, and I work in senior financial consulting. Ever since college, my family has nicknamed me the Balancer, the girl who knows how to handle every crisis when the whole house is on the verge of falling apart. And to be honest, I used to be proud of that. I was the one who paid Asher's tuition, my younger brother, after he lost his scholarship for prioritizing fun over studying. I was the one who gritted my teeth and took on nearly $70,000 of debt that my father, Mr. Franklin, had sunk into risky investments. And I was also the one who quietly paid off my mother's credit card debt. Clara even, though she never once asked if I was doing okay. Back then, I used to think, no matter what happens, family is the one place you can't abandon. But over time, that very idea of can't abandon began to tighten around me, like an invisible rope, soft yet suffocating. Last week, I received a message from my mother. "My dear Eliza, come over to the house at 6 tonight. A surprise is waiting for you." I stared at the screen. Surprise from my mother was rarely ever a good thing. The last time she used that word, the entire family had gathered to convince me to co-sign a loan for Asher's new business just a few months after his previous one had gone bankrupt. That evening, I sat in my car in front of the 2-story suburban house I had contributed nearly half the money to buy 4 years ago. Of course, the house was still under my parents' names. Through the golden lit window, I saw silhouettes moving and laughter echoed as if everything was fine. I grabbed my coat, adjusted my scarf, and stepped up to ring the bell. The door swung open. My mother Clara stood there, her hair styled in tight curls, lips painted bright red, her eyes sparkling so intensely it made me shiver. "Surprise," she shouted, pulling me in like we'd never grown distant. The living room was packed with relatives I hadn't seen since Christmas 2 years ago. Uncle Marvin, Aunt Fiona, even Cousin Zoe, who only ever showed up when there were gifts or cash, were all there. "Early happy birthday, Eliza." I smiled, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, wow, you really did catch me off guard." But inside, a nagging suspicion was growing. My mother led me to the sofa in the center of the room, and my father, Mr. Franklin, quickly handed me a cocktail. "Your favorite drink, green apple gin, right?" I gave a faint smile. "I've hated gin since I was 25. "Sit down, sweetheart," my mother said softly, but her eyes flicked toward the side table where a leather folder was placed neatly as if waiting for me. I sat down, my fingers brushing the folder. The first line that caught my eye read, "Asset Division Agreement, Margaret Morgan's Inheritance Trust." I tilted my head. "What's this, Mom?" "Oh, just some boring paperwork," she said quickly, placing her hand over mine. "Leave it for later, tonight's for celebrating." I kept smiling, but my hand opened the file. "I think I want to see it now." The room fell silent. My father stood up, raised his glass, like he was trying to break the tension. "Let's all raise a toast to Eliza, the shining star of our family." I turned to the first page, then my eyes stopped at a single line. "I, Eliza Jane Morgan, agree to forfeit all rights related to Margaret Morgan's Inheritance Trust." I looked up at my mother. "Mom, what is this?" She was still smiling, but it had turned strained. "Just a formality, sweetheart. It's tax-related, or a way to transfer everything without telling me." I asked, my voice calm, eyes locked on hers. Asher cut in. Please, Eliza. Everyone else already agreed. You just need to sign I laughed, but not the joyful kind. So this was the real reason for the surprise party. My mother's hand tightened. Don't make a scene. Everyone's here. I closed the file and rested it on my lap. Then let everyone hear the truth. They deserve that much. I looked around the room filled with familiar faces that suddenly felt distant. I knew tonight marked a turning point. I still sat there in the house I once called home, now colder than a stranger's shelter. No one said a word. Asher stared at the floor. Hands clasped tightly, Zoe kept her eyes on her phone like she was hoping a message would save her from the moment. My mother, Clara, remained composed, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. I turned to my father. Dad, Mom, if this is really about Grandma, why not just tell me? My mother came closer, voice sweet but sharp as a blade. You worry too much, darling. It's really not a big deal. Things will go more smoothly if we're the ones inheriting. Smoothly for who? Mom, I laughed dryly. I thought I was part of the family, not just a financial tool. A deep voice came from the corner of the room. That's enough, Eliza. It was Uncle Marvin, the only one who had ever spoken up for me when I needed it. Then I'm sorry for not signing away Grandma's last legacy. I hadn't noticed Rachel, my best friend, had stepped up beside me. She didn't say anything, just stood there ready if I needed her. Eliza, my mother snapped the smile, gone. Don't turn this into a tragedy. I stood up holding the folder between two fingers like it might dirty my clothes. You wrote this script. I'm just refusing to play the part. I walked over to the dining table, set the folder down, and looked them straight in the eye. Grandma Margaret left everything to me because she understood. And tonight, all of you proved she was absolutely right. No one spoke. Rachel, shall we? She nodded just as my hand touched the doorknob. My mother called after me. If you don't sign, there will be consequences. Eliza, I turned back, eyes calm. I've lived with consequences my whole life. Now I choose clarity, and I walked out of that house, not with rage or tears, but with awareness. Rachel's car glided past streets glittering with lights. I sat quietly, my heart still echoing with noise from the past. You okay? She asked softly. Not yet, but I will be. We stopped at a small lakeside cafe where the golden light shimmered on the water like a glistening mirror. Rachel brought over 2 cups of hot tea. I took the folder my mother had tried to make me sign out of my bag. This time, I flipped through every page carefully. It wasn't just a waiver of inheritance rights. It included a temporary power of attorney and a new asset allocation plan. Nearly all of my grandmother's assets were being transferred into a new trust under my parents' management. Rachel frowned. They weren't planning to give you a cent. I nodded. Worse, they were planning to use my name to legitimize the whole thing. She sighed, then asked, What about your grandma's lawyer? You said you'd find him. I smiled slightly. Tomorrow I'm going to see Mr. Mason Hale. I opened my phone and scrolled back to the last message Grandma Margaret Morgan had sent me just a week before she passed. Eliza, if one day things become hard to understand, go see my lawyer, Mr. Mason Hale. I've left a few things for you. Early the next morning, I called the office. A professional female voice answered, and an appointment was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived 10 minutes early, my heart pounding in my chest. The office was located in a classic red brick building in downtown Creston, with large windows facing the autumn-colored park. Mr. Mason was a calm man, silver-haired, in his early 60s. He shook my hand with a warm gaze, then led me into a small room lined with legal books. On the table was a thick sealed envelope with my name handwritten on it. Margaret left you a private video message, he said, opening a drawer and taking out a USB drive. She also left documents related to the original. Well, the one your family is currently trying to alter. I took a deep breath. May I watch the video now? He nodded, plugging the USB into the computer. The screen lit up and a familiar voice filled the room. Still slow, gentle, and a little frail from age, but each word as sharp as the summer afternoons when I used to sit and listen to her stories. Eliza, if you're watching this, it means everything is unfolding just as I feared. I sat up straighter, eyes glued to the screen. You've always been the only one who never asked for anything, never took advantage. That's why I wanted to protect you. I've seen how your mother treats others, even how she treated me. They use family as an excuse to take things that aren't theirs. I left everything to you, not because you need it, but because you deserve it. My hand clenched eyes growing hot. The screen shifted to show the original terms of the inheritance trust. A line stood out clearly. If the heir is coerced into relinquishing their rights, the entire estate will automatically be transferred to the charitable organizations I've designated. Your family doesn't know about this clause. Mr. Mason said, but if you want, I can activate it today. I looked at him, then back at the screen. Can I have a copy? Of course, he handed me a new USB. There's another video. Your grandmother wanted the entire family to see it. I held the device, heart racing with too many emotions, but then a plan started to form in my mind. It's time they saw the truth. Rachel was waiting for me in the parking lot. On the way home, I told her everything. When I mentioned the video, her eyes lit up. You're going to play it in front of them. I nodded. Tonight I'm inviting everyone over. A small gathering and with a surprise ending just for them. I smiled. This time I'm the one writing the script. The plan was simple: invite them all over, play Grandma Margaret's video, and let them face the truth themselves. If anyone still had schemes, the clause transferring the assets to charity remained ready to be triggered. That evening, I sent a message to my mother. Mom, I've thought it over tomorrow. I'm inviting everyone to the apartment at 5 p.m. I want to settle everything peacefully. Her response came almost instantly. Sweetheart, I knew you'd understand. I'm so glad I didn't need to read carefully. I knew Clara. She never turned down a meeting she thought she could manipulate. Rachel helped me tidy the living room. I borrowed a small projector from work and mounted it on a shelf facing the sofa. The white wall would serve as the perfect screen. I took a deep breath, ran a final check, and placed the USB with Grandma Margaret's video beside the computer. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from knowing that after tonight everything would change forever. At exactly 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang. The first to arrive was my mother. Clara wore a beige dress, her hair perfectly curled, heels clicking on the floor, like she was walking a runway. "Where's Madison?" she asked the moment she stepped in. The middle name only she still used, as if to remind me, I brought you into this world. I'm the one who invited everyone. I stepped out gently. Please come in. My father, Mr. Franklin, followed next, then Uncle Marvin, Aunt Loretta, and finally Asher, visibly tense. I invited them to sit down, then walked to the projector. I want to share something with all of you. I plugged in the USB, and the screen lit up with an image of Grandma Margaret. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, eyes sharp, voice steady as ever. If you're watching this, it means Eliza didn't sign any of the documents you tried to make. Her Clara shifted slightly in her seat but said nothing. I've created an irrevocable trust. Everything belongs to Eliza, the only one in this family who never demanded, never deceived, never disappointed me. Asher lowered his head. My mother fidgeted in her chair. My father sat frozen like a statue. There are 3 conditions. The funds are for personal living, housing, healthcare, and education only. No investments in any family-related projects. Donations can be made only to verified charitable organizations. I looked at my mother. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. If any family member attempts to coerce Eliza into giving up her rights or files, a legal dispute, 50% of the trust will be immediately donated to the 4 pre-selected charities. I turned off the projector. The room was dead silent. I know you planned to make me sign everything away yesterday, but that's not what she wanted, and I'm not a naive little girl anymore. My mother sprang up, voice shaking. You're blowing this out of proportion. I did it all for you. For me, I asked quietly. Or because you feared that if I kept the estate, you couldn't use my money to fix your own problems. My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough, Eliza. This is family. Everything should be shared. I stared at him without blinking. I've shared enough. Now it's time I keep what's mine. I placed a printed copy of the trust's terms in the center of the table. She saw all of this coming. And if anyone still plans to break this, remember, every action has its price. My mother clutched her purse tighter, eyes darting around. One day you'll regret this. You'll need us. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but today I need something else. Respect, I opened the door. This meeting is over. My apartment was quiet again, but this time not lonely. Peaceful, I looked at the USB. It didn't just contain a will. It was proof that she believed in me, that she believed I was strong enough to choose for myself. If they still planned to reverse the game, they'd find out. I already had the next move. The next morning, I sat alone in the small kitchen, a cold cup of coffee in hand. The USB was still in my coat pocket, but in my hands was the thick folder Mr. Mason had given me on the first day. Your grandmother was meticulous. He had said she documented every financial transaction involving your family, from credit cards opened in your name back in college to disguised money transfers labeled as medical fees. I didn't know how long I sat there flipping through the pages, bank statements, audio recordings, official confirmations, and by the time I folded the last sheet, I knew one thing for sure. This time I wasn't just defending myself, I was the one speaking the truth. We met at a small, quiet cafe in downtown Riverside, the same place my father used to take me for pancakes every weekend when I was little. But today wasn't a warm childhood morning. Today was a reckoning, Mr. Franklin. My father arrived 10 minutes late. He walked in with a forced smile. Sorry, traffic was bad, but thank you for agreeing to meet. I nodded and gestured to the chair across from me. A thick folder sat on the table. I didn't come here to reconnect, I said bluntly. I came for clarity. He frowned when he saw the folder. What is this? I slid it toward him. Documents including loans taken out in my name, credit cards. Mom opened and drained from my student account and all the times you said it was to help Asher, but the money ended up in Mom's private account in Clearwater. He gave a strained smile. You're misunderstanding, Eliza. It was all for the family. Everyone does it. I looked at him, unblinking. For the family. Do you remember when I was 21, working 3 jobs at once to pay off credit card debt while you were gambling at Granite Hills? His face froze. I stayed calm. Or the time Mom called me sobbing, saying Asher had an accident and needed $8,000 for emergency surgery. I pulled out a bank statement. 2 hours later, that money was wired to a car dealership in Fort Haven, where she bought a used Range Rover. He stammered. How do you know that I pulled out another document and slid it across the table? A recording of the conversation between Mom and the car dealer. Grandma Margaret kept it. She always knew. She knew everything. For the first time, I saw Mr. Franklin not as the cold, calculating father, but as someone who had lost the upper hand. What do you want? I crossed my arms. Not money, not even an apology. Just this, I looked him in the eye. From now on, neither you nor Mom touches a single cent of my inheritance trust. No more rescue calls, no more of Asher's emergencies, no more mistaken transfers. I leaned in, my voice like steel. If anyone in the family tries to access the trust again, I'll press charges. The case file is ready to go to the Financial Investigations Bureau and the IRS. He opened his mouth to object, but I raised my hand to cut him off. And one more thing. I know you're trying to hire another lawyer to overturn the will, but under the Asset Protection Clause, if any coercion or litigation occurs, 50% of the trust will be immediately redirected to charitable organizations. I stood up and gathered the documents. If you want to call Mom and strategize, go ahead. But remember, every wrong move costs half of everything. He looked at me, trying to gauge whether I'd really follow through. I smiled faintly. You taught me chess, Dad. Sacrifice the pawns to protect the queen. Seems like this time. You picked the wrong piece. I left the cafe without looking back. For the first time in years, my steps felt light. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about the right to take back my own life. Something they never thought I could do. On Monday morning, I arrived early at Attorney Mason Hale's office. The family meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., but I wanted to make sure everything was in place. The conference room was ready. The projector had been tested. The hard copy folders were neatly arranged. On the screen was the paused frame from the final video Grandma Margaret had left. Her face was stern, her eyes sharp behind thick glasses. Mr. Mason entered holding another set of documents. Everything is prepared as requested. All financial evidence has been printed and clearly marked, I nodded. Perfect, no formalities when they arrive. Right on time, the door opened. Clara walked in first, followed by Mr. Franklin and Asher. They were dressed like they were attending a boardroom negotiation. My mother wore a charcoal blazer, my father had on his infamous power tie, the red one. Asher stayed silent, hands in his pockets avoiding my gaze. Mason began, "Thank you all for being punctual. Today we'll view the final video left by Mrs. Margaret Morgan along with the documentation for asset transfer and corporate shares." My mother scoffed lightly. "Hopefully it's less dramatic than the show at home." I didn't respond, I just pressed play. The screen lit up. Grandma Margaret's voice rang out clear and unwavering. "If you're watching this, it means things are happening just as I expected, Clara Franklin. I know everything, from the undocumented withdrawals to using company funds for personal use. Every transaction, every statement, every falsified report has been recorded." My mother turned pale. My father glanced at Mason, perhaps hoping he'd turn off the video. "I have transferred full ownership of Greenwall and Pierce, the company I co-founded with my husband, to Eliza. She is the only one in the family who has never exploited the family name for profit. Never lied, never disguised greed as love." Asher lifted his head, stunned. My mother sprang to her feet. "Impossible, that was my father's legacy." I stood up. "And now it belongs to the only one left who still respects that legacy. These are the ownership transfer documents, notarized and registered." I placed the folder on the table. My father shouted, "This is illegal, I'm still the acting CEO." I cut in. "Until you officially resign." "Which is happening now." I slid a resignation letter across the table. "If you refuse to sign, all financial misconduct, evidence will be submitted to the Securities Commission, including hotel bills under fake names for weekend conferences and the casino expenses under aliases." No one said a word. Mason added, "Also, if anyone attempts to interfere or intimidate the beneficiary, the Asset Protection Clause will be triggered. Half of the estate will be donated to organizations supporting victims of financial abuse." I looked directly at my mother. "You always said I was too sensitive, but the truth is, I was just too patient." My father trembled as he picked up the pen to sign the resignation. "If I sign, will you stay quiet?" I looked at him. "I don't want to damage the family's reputation, but if either of you continues to manipulate me, I won't hesitate to make everything public." He looked to my mother. She said nothing, her face, pale lips pressed into a tight line. At last he signed. I gathered the documents, scanning them one final time. "From now on, all shared assets will be audited independently. Supplemental credit cards are canceled, the corporate apartment is revoked, the discretionary spending account is frozen." Asher muttered, "Eliza, this is overkill." I turned to him, my voice soft. "No." "Asher, this should have ended a long time ago. Today we're just rewriting it." With the truth, I left the meeting room. No slamming doors, no dramatic exits. But I knew to them that silence was louder than any final word. 2 weeks later, I officially became the new CEO of Greenwall and Pierce, the company my grandmother built from a small office in Wellington. Today it's one of the leading investment consulting firms on the East Coast. I sat in the penthouse office where my father's nameplate had hung for over 2 decades. I didn't change much, just removed his portrait and replaced it with one of my grandmother's paintings, a forest path bathed in golden sunset light. I think she would have liked that. But I didn't just take over the company. I fulfilled what I believe was her unspoken wish, founding the Margaret Morgan Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to financial education for youth and counseling for those manipulated financially by their own families. 20% of the firm's annual profits will go into this foundation under a resolution I submitted to the board. They were surprised at first, but in the end, they understood why I did it. That afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "Eliza, it's Mom." I sat still for a few minutes, then typed my reply. "Friday, 3 p.m., my office. They arrived on time." My mother, Clara, looked as polished as ever, but her eyes were more tired. Mr. Franklin, after a recent hospital stay due to mild heart failure, looked visibly gaunt. The traces of pride and arrogance that once defined him had faded, replaced by the weariness of someone who had failed one too many times. "Eliza," my mother began softly, "I didn't come to ask for money. I just want to hear you out." Clearly, I sat upright facing them. Two small envelopes lay on the table, which I pushed toward them. I'm not here to sever ties forever, but I can't continue being the family's bottomless wallet. Inside the envelopes were lists of independent financial counseling centers and treatment programs for gambling and compulsive spending. If you truly want a fresh start, I'm willing to pay for these programs, but I will not sign another check to patch up old mistakes. My mother hesitated. Do you think we're terrible people? I shook my head slowly. I think you're people who never learned how to set boundaries. And worse, you never gave me the chance to learn how to set them for myself. My father spoke gently. I was wrong, not just once, but seeing you now? Strong in control, maybe that was the best thing Margaret ever did. I didn't reply, not because I wasn't moved, but because I had learned something important. My future should never hinge on someone else's remorse. They left without a hug, without a plea. Just silence. That evening, I returned to the office of the Margaret Morgan Foundation, where a group of college students was preparing for a workshop on recognizing financial abuse within families. I stood quietly at the back of the room, observing. No one knew I was the founder, and I preferred it that way. Rachel arrived late carrying two bubble teas. She set one in front of me. I heard Asher's younger sister signed up to volunteer. I let out a quiet laugh. Good. At least the next generation still has hope. Rachel handed me the draft layout for the Foundation's website. What do you want to write in the About Us section? I paused for a moment, then wrote by hand. We believe family should never be a place where you fear financial control, and real love never comes with conditions. Rachel nodded, her eyes lighting up beautiful. If she were still alive, I know Margaret would be incredibly proud. I looked out the window where the city lights twinkled like a holiday evening. For the first time in years, I no longer felt torn between gratitude and guilt. I owed no one anything. And finally, I was living a life that truly belonged to me. I once believed that blood ties were sacred, unbreakable, that no matter how many times I was hurt, I would always forgive, because they were family. But then I realized some ties are born only to bind you, and if you don't have the courage to cut them, you'll stay trapped in a cycle of blind sacrifice forever. That autumn, as golden leaves blanketed the path leading into the headquarters of Greenwall and Pierce, I stepped into a new chapter. No more midnight calls, no more cryptic texts about money issues, no more guilt. Every time I said no to the people who once called me the dutiful daughter, I lived in a small apartment near Halden Square. Not luxurious, but warm enough that every time I walked through the door, I no longer felt lost. On my bookshelf were new photo frames, me and Rachel, me with our volunteer team on our first trip to Vermont. Me and Asher standing together at the company's restructuring announcement. And one photo, smiling in the mirror, no longer pretending. One late night after a discussion session on cutting ties with toxic family members, Rachel sat beside me holding a hot cup of tea. If your mom calls again, will you answer? I was quiet for a while, then shook my head. Not out of anger, but because I understood. Every time I reopen that door, I give them another chance to take back what took me years to reclaim. Peace, Rachel nodded, gazing up at the soft ceiling lights. Your family didn't lose you because of money, they lost you. Because they never learned how to keep someone they assumed would never leave. That thought stayed with me into the next day when I was invited to speak at a youth conference for those hurt by their families. I stepped up to the podium with no long speech, just a few notes and a truth I no longer felt the need to hide. My name is Eliza, and maybe the first thing I want you to know is you are not selfish for choosing to protect yourself. The room fell silent. I continued. I was once my parents' endless wallet, the successful daughter, but behind the scenes were midnight calls, emotional blackmail. If you don't help, what will happen to us? I didn't just give money. I gave time, trust, and years of my youth trying to hold together what was never truly whole. But peace built on guilt is never lasting. I glanced toward the front row where Asher sat. He nodded at me. Silent but enough, and I understood. Family isn't who gave you life, it's who stays when you choose to live yours. It could be a college friend, a coworker, or even yourself. The one who rose not for anyone else but for your own healing. I stepped down. The entire room stood and applauded. Not because I was a CEO, but because I had once dared to let go and begin again. That night, I sat alone in the foundation office. Watching the streetlights fade, I opened a drawer and pulled out the last handwritten letter Grandma Margaret had left me. Never shown to anyone before, dearest Eliza. If one day you must choose between keeping the family and keeping yourself, remember true family will never ask you to lose who you are. Choosing yourself is not abandonment, it's the only way to be whole. And if you must go toward peace. I folded the letter and placed it back in the drawer. Peace not something I was handed, but something I learned how to build. And for the first time in my life, I knew this with certainty. I don't need anyone's permission to be happy. Some ties called family don't hold you with love. They bind you with guilt and obligation. But Eliza chose to walk away, not because she didn't love them, but because she was finally learning to love herself. Her grandmother once wrote, "Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's the only way to live fully and love truly." And Eliza lived that truth, no longer the one who carried it all, no longer the responsible one, but a woman free to honor her own worth. If your heart carries the silent wounds of being told it's for family when it never came from lover, remember this: you have the right to choose peace. You don't need anyone's permission to be happy. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt like you were the one holding the family together like Eliza? And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more honest, heartfelt, and unforgettable stories like this one. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We'll see you in the next video, where every story is a step closer to peace.